All right, well, thank you everyone for being here. So, this came out of the Main Street organization. Actually, I love this, and this turnout is incredible. I didn't know what to expect. So as I was thinking about, well, what do we present about? I knew it'd be focused on digital media and social media and marketing, and but what direction do I go? And so I defaulted to the things that I have learned throughout my career. And I will preface all of that by saying that this can be a starter conversation. So I'm hopeful that there's a couple nuggets throughout the presentation that you can pull from, but know that the invitation for follow-up questions, whether that be today or later with either myself or Travis, and we can connect individually, I'm here for that. I mean, that's the purpose of this type of presentation. So I wanted to just say that ahead of time, that knowing that this is an open conversation and certainly should be moving forward. So my focus today is going to be, how do you build your social media toolbox? I think about being efficient in social media because I think it's, I live and breathe social media professionally, but I'll be the first to say that it's not something that I used to think about all the time. I do more so now because, I'm paid to think about it, but as I was growing in this field, I always thought about how can I make this the most efficient thing possible. So when we look at topics for today, yeah, we're going to talk about why it matters, and we're going to talk about channels, but really one of my main focuses is going to be, how do you make this so that you don't have to think about it all the time? And I know this, my wife and I, we have a small business as well, and you always hear the phrase of you get into, you start a business because you love what that business is, and then you start getting into it and you realize you have all of these other things that you have to think about, whether it comes to financials or staffing, and I would imagine that social media is also in that vein that you're like, I didn't realize I'd have to think about this all the time. And so how do we make it efficient? That's really the goal and a theme of what I want to talk about today. So when we think about, this is brief background for me. I work for the Ames Regional Economic Alliance, work with Travis through Ames Main Street. Prior to that, I worked for Ames Public Schools, and then prior to that, I worked for a smaller school where I launched social media. So I don't have a degree in marketing and communications. I built that portfolio over time when it comes to storytelling and print publications and photography and videography work. And so when I went to be the director of communications for Ames Public Schools, I literally had this portfolio, and I told the superintendent at the time, Dr. Tim Taylor, I said, you're not going to find the degree of marketing and communications on my resume, but this right here, this is my portfolio, and this is what I can do. And really, when it comes down to it, I'd put in the work for the years prior to that, and it paid off for me because he took a chance on me and he said, yep, absolutely. And he goes, oh, and by the way, we need to pass that bond referendum for the new high school in this first year. And I was like, holy smokes, like, how do you do this? But I went back to all of the work that I'd done before and this portfolio that I'd built. And so then that position led me now to the Ames Regional Economic Alliance. And so just quick bullet points. We do a lot of social media when it comes to that. Actually, I accounted for it today on my phone. When I think about social media, we operate 11 different social media accounts, and some of them are a higher volume than others, but 11, that kind of felt like a lot when I was going through it on my phone today. Traction Magazine is part of what we do, and then we have the podcast today. So when it comes to marketing and communications and digital media, I've run the gamut of a lot of different things, and so my day is filled with writing and photography and graphics and storytelling, but all of that oftentimes runs through social media as well. You can see the skills, you can see the channels. I kind of outlined a lot of it, but the Ames Public Schools and now with the Alliance, those are certainly the two organizations that I've represented that have had the most impact on my career. So the key to social media, now if I always do think about this. What is the easy button to social media? And I'm going to tell you that there isn't necessarily an easy button, but it can look different for everyone. But I'll tell you this, my career started with just starting to do stuff. The interesting thing about social media is that, you know, it doesn't have to dominate your whole life. You can have this entry point where, hey, I'm going to try this, I'm going to start this, and then you get efficient at it, and now that becomes much easier, and you start to add other things. I will say that one of the biggest keys, at least in my opinion, to social media is figuring out a way to be ongoing and consistent about it. And that's where the efficiency part comes in my opinion, is how can we build the toolbox so that we can replicate it while also making it slightly different, but then we continue to build all of these different things. Keep it simple, and also I think about social media as the long game because it's ever going. I oftentimes think about, there's a Seinfeld episode, and Newman, he was going crazy. He works for the post office, and he was going crazy, and he goes, you know, it's the mail, like it just never stops coming. And I always think about that when it comes to social media, because we are always thinking about, like, what is the next thing, because it's important for me and others on our team to be consistent, and because then we become that source of information. We oftentimes then become top of mind for people who are scrolling on that social media. So we're going to talk about all of these things. I have a running theme throughout this presentation. I'll credit my wife for it. We oftentimes have these types of conversations, and many of you know my wife. She also works in this field, and so if you like actually a lot of what happens through the downtown social media, you can credit her for a lot of that. But we're going to talk about movies a bit, and so, you know, this comes from Field of Dreams. Actually, as I was looking this up, it's actually, if you build it, he will come, but that didn't really play as well on the slide, and most people say they will come, and so that's why I put that up there. But what's interesting, when we think about like starting a business, you think it's like, wow, I love this business, and we have this high quality product, that's all we need. And actually, I don't think that's the case. I think there's always like this hustle and grind that needs to take place after the fact. And so, and we're going to talk about an example of that I'm going to point to as a movie reference coming up. So when we talk about social media and why it matters, I really think about it now today as it's a utility. If you run in a small business, and in my case it's an organization or several organizations, I think of social media as a utility. Yet you just have to be doing it. You may not like doing it. You may not always think about it all the time, but I really do think of it as a utility. And so I oftentimes reflect on, what are my own social media habits? There are times when I'm like, is that store open on Sunday afternoon? Where do I go? Facebook. I mean, that's what I do. I go to social media to see when they're open. Oh, I'd seen that one thing earlier. So, you know, if it's an event, I always click interested because I want to be reminded of it later. And so I use those as examples of social media. It's in every, you know, it's in our everyday world. And so people are going there as a resource. And so to have a footprint and have a presence on social media, you almost need to have it. And you know, this goes back years and years, you know, with the advent of the telephone. Well, if you're a business, you got to have a telephone, and then you have to have a website. And today, you know, social media is 20 years old. You know, it's not a new thing. I actually did look it up today. I mean, Facebook launched in 2004. I remember it. But now 20 years later, and that's the dominant force in social media, and there's others, and we're going to talk about them, but social media is native to a lot of people and only will continue to be native. And so to have that ongoing presence is important. At least for small businesses, and I'm a firm believer in this, you know, it also kind of humanizes your business. Like when they see your product or whatever's in your toolbox of social media, they know that they can come to downtown Ames or whatever the small business is, and they may see that person or see that product. I think people do naturally know they want to shop local. I think that like there is an investment, and downtown is a great example of that, where like this is built-in community in Ames. I think unlike any other geographic region of Ames and our community, like downtown is such, it's very blessed to have that built-in community. And so, and there's some other ways, you know, I say it's cost effective with the exception of time and thought, but ultimately, you know, you can start a social media account for absolutely nothing. And then word of mouth, I think, is a big thing as well, and that's gonna be an emphasis in the future as well. So I was listening to a podcast, and I'm a fan of movies, and I'm actually a fan of like late season movies when you start getting into like awards, like for the Oscars and the Emmys. So like when I'm thinking about, all right, what am I gonna watch next? Oh, the Emmys, you know, the nominations just came out. So I oftentimes go to those lists first because I kind of like that high production value and kind of being part of the pop culture of movies and TV. So I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about like, how do you get an Emmy nomination? And I'll share this, but I think it's an example of also what happens in the Oscars or the Grammys or all these other things. Those studios, they're hustling for these Emmy nominations. They're not just building a great product. They are telling people, we want to have an Emmy nomination. In fact, one of the first things, like one of the first bars, and this is from a professional, you know, who's tuned into Hollywood and all of this stuff, they said, the first thing that you need to demonstrate as like a studio or you're working on a project like a movie or a TV show is that you actually want an Emmy nomination. So that's why you see all of like these actors and people doing all of like the radio and TV, and they're at these showings and those showings because they're showing that they want an Emmy nomination. Of course, for them there is a financial benefit to that, but it's not just enough to build a great product. You also need to hustle then on the back end. And when you talk about like how much a movie costs, and I know this because I kind of pay attention to this, they oftentimes double the budget of what it takes to actually make. They say, oh, this movie costs $80 million to make and another $80 million in marketing ad revenues. And so I'm not here suggesting that you should be spending a ton of money in this. That is not my message. My message is simply that there's more to it than just a good product. There's a certain amount of hustle on the back end, and I'm using that as an example that can be applied somewhat to social media. Again, not the cost, but maybe some additional thought and time into it. And so this kind of reiterates that, and so it kind of ties in the things that I oftentimes think about is like, okay, how can I be consistent in my posting to social media? And oftentimes what that is going to do is it's going to continue to bring your business top of mind to people. So when we think about our own social media habits, I do it, other people do it, you know, you're looking at things and you keep doing this, but the more that you can see certain businesses pop up, the more they're top of mind and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I should stop by there tomorrow or Friday night or next week. So none of this is, you know, really rocket science. If I were to boil this page down to a handful of bullet points, each channel has its own benefits. If you wanted to pick one or two, you go to Facebook or Instagram. That is where the majority of the people are. The majority of the people my age, they're on Facebook. Maybe some of the younger demographic isn't as much, but now they're on Instagram. And so both of those two are actually owned by the same company, being Meta, and that I'll have a tie-in on the back end of that. But there's certainly value in some of these other ones. So I'll take the Ames Regional Economic Alliance. We are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, we are on LinkedIn, and we've had really good success because we're a business organization, and so some of that business content resonates with the people who want to live on that LinkedIn platform. We are not on TikTok, but as you all know, likely, it's hot with the young people, and everything is viral, you know, on TikTok. It's not something that we've dabbled into quite yet. We're certainly open to it. My current understanding of TikTok is that it's a very different platform as far as the content creation than the others. We do have a YouTube channel. We do quite a bit of video, but a lot of our long-form videos land on there. So I could see Patrick here in the recipe. Patrick, do you have a YouTube channel? Yeah, I figured you did because you're dealing with long-form video, so it makes sense for you. It doesn't mean that it makes sense for everyone, and certainly there are others. Twitter, we do still post to Twitter. That's kind of turned a corner in a lot of different ways. We did have it downtown Ames on Twitter. We stopped posting to it just because it really wasn't beneficial to us. We're still doing it from the Alliance only because it's pretty simple. Oftentimes what we post on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, we just post to Twitter by default because we're posting to the other ones as well. It's the same content, but we don't really see a ton of interaction on that. And this one is interesting. I added Pinterest not because I know much about it, but because I was talking to our summer intern earlier this year, and she said that she goes to Pinterest all the time to learn about things. And so that felt like a little bit of a callback for me where I knew when it was up and coming, I was like, oh yeah, Pinterest, oh okay. And then I kind of thought it faded away, and maybe it did, but now it's back, I'm told, but I have not looked into it. But I added it because it was an interesting conversation that I had, and I think she's 21 now, and so, you know, she's of that cool age, so I figure she knows. I'm guessing other 21-year-olds are looking on Pinterest, but we do not have that, and I don't know a ton about it. All right, so building your toolbox. I'm going to show examples. But ultimately, this can mean a lot of different things. And so when I talked about easing into it, I say you find inspiration from what some others are doing and take that inspiration and channel it into your own business. And so I've provided some examples. We are continually building our toolbox for social media at the Alliance. Sometimes when we build this toolbox, it lasts for in perpetuity, and we figure out the cadence to keep it going. For me, oftentimes that includes like the cadence of our organization, and then oftentimes having a graphic, a stock graphic that we can use and easily switch out some information. And I use Toolbox because I'm going to use one post as an example. If we have a graphic that we've created and we know that we can replicate this over time, we try to space those out over time as well so that we have other tools in our social media toolbox that we fit in between. And what that does for us is it differentiates our content while also not making it like we need to recreate the wheel every single time. And so the goal, you know, is always to, all right, let's build this first. Okay, well now we know how to do that, and we figured out how to do that within the flow of our business. Well, what else can we do? Oh, I saw this other business, and it could be from anywhere. It could be a national company. Oh, that's interesting. I could use this idea and apply it to my own. And now we have another piece in our toolbox. So product photography is certainly part of that. If you have high customer engagement or even know people that could provide, you know, some comments, that could be something that you know, is created into a graphic. And now you have some commentary on either the services you provide or the products that you're providing, you know. But if you use them sporadically or use, you know, a couple of your tools this week and then a couple different ones next week, you can go back and use these previous tools in this third week. And, you know, you can kind of have this rolling social media cadence. And what it does is again, it differentiates the content, but you're building as you're going, and you're able to, say, post a couple times a week, maybe even once a day if you figure it into that, and we'll talk more about that as well. So, you know, this isn't a deep list, and this is where the conversations can continue moving forward, because I think it's different for everyone, but I think it's, you do the work on the front end, that becomes efficient, and then you continue to use that while building then your next tool for your toolbox. But I will note, this is how you build consistency in social media, which for me is very important. In fact, when I came over from the school district to the Alliance, I was asking a lot of questions, and I was working with people on our team. And I tell this story all of the time. So my wife and I, we've lived in Ames now 22 years. And I worked for the school district for 5 years, and I'm like, I'm an engaged, like, community member. Like, I know what's going on. And so when I had the opportunity to go to then what was the Ames Chamber of Commerce, I'm like, I know what they do. I know what this organization does. I've done some research, but also, like, I'm just in tune, I thought. And I come in, and I'm like, so we're doing this in Boone. Oh, we also run this, and we also, and my point is, I had no idea all of the things that were going on because, in my opinion, this is not a shot, but I didn't feel like it was talked about in like as robustly. And so I said, if we're doing the work, let's talk about the work. Why are we not talking about the work? Like, if we're engaged in all of these things, let's continue to celebrate, like, the region. So the first thing we did was we jacked up our social media content, and we just started churning stuff out. And we were building that toolbox in real time 3 years ago. Hey, we have new members. We should shout them out immediately. So we build a graphic for new members to what was then the chamber, but now the Alliance. And now we're continuing to do that. Oh, we're doing these types of events. Well, we should be doing this, this, and this leading up to the event, and then doing coverage at the end. And then we started expanding our storytelling as well. And I could go, the list could go on and on, but each post that, even if you go to now, those were tools that we built over time and now that's much more efficient, and so that was really important to me because I was like we should be talking about these things, and I feel like we've done a good job, and we've applied that, to our downtown accounts as well, and others as well. So I did a quick poll. This was not comprehensive, but I literally, whatever was top on the downtown accounts that we were following, I pulled, and I was like, well, this is a good example, this is a good example. And so here's some tools that are in the toolbox from others here in downtown. So I'll point to the lower left, or actually in the upper left, product images. At Oak Lane, doing a great job, and they figured out how to do product images. That's great. Events, an event graphic, looks great as well. I love that as well. Let's see here, video content from the shops on Clark and Main, but Nook and Nest, and so that was wonderful. Staff shout out in the lower right, and so and event coverage down right there in the middle center, and so these were all like great examples of tools that have been built over time. And this is the way that I see social media when I scan things. I always think about content creation, like how is this made? And I'm going to come back to this slide here as well because I have some other things to point out. So when we think about best practices of social media, I mean, this list could be much longer. And there's no wrong way really to do social media. I think applying best practices is really good, but ultimately think about one of the key messages early on was, keep it simple. So again, I think back to my own social media habits. I mean, you guys are all doing this as well. You're doing this, right? I mean, social media comes and goes. It is not, it's a utility on one hand where you absolutely certainly should be doing it. It's also the reality that just because, I'll use the Alliance for example, just because we communicated something through social media, it doesn't mean that all of our followers saw it. It's the timing of the people that are going there. It's what else is going on in their mind. Social media and our lifestyle is oftentimes it's a break from life. And so we have things going through our head when we're going through social media. And so, you're going to miss things. You don't have to be afraid to talk about things more than once. If there is an event coming up or a sale or a special, posting it once may not be enough. Social media comes and it goes. And so if you can talk about it more, that's wonderful. I think that can pay off. And then you can, continue to build your toolbox to find different ways to talk about it as well. So, and I can share out all these slides, so I don't need to read this, but one of the things that I think about as well is, and I've heard this, and actually I've done it, and we've had these conversations internally, it's, well, we've already talked about that. Well, don't assume people have seen it. Make it as easy as possible for people to engage with it. And so when I think about graphics, I want to include, at least the date, the location, maybe the time frame, and then obviously if they're interested in whatever event that we're hosting, they can dig deeper for that, but I want it to be easy. And then how do I get to the event? We'll include the link. And so don't assume people are going to retain or actually search out information. And I would encourage you to reflect on your own social media habits. If it's hard, you might find something else to do in those 5 minutes when you saw that and thought about it, like, oh, I should really look into that. So here are some good examples. I really included this. The graphic on the lower left, it includes the date and time. And this seems obvious, but the number of event graphics that I have seen where I'm like, oh, I really like that band or whatever. Where is that at again? You just assume, like, I think as making it, you're like, oh, well, it's going to be on our account. They'll assume. You can throw it into the graphic as well. Just make it as easy as possible for people to quickly comprehend and understand what it is that they're looking at. All right, what's the date? And if you say like Friday, is it this Friday? Is it next Friday? Include the date. In the upper center, do you like that dress? Well, here's the link to it. Easy as that. And then I also like the event coverage down in the lower center, because I'm like, if I'm someone who is looking to host an event, well, how do I call? How do I pursue more information? Again, I appreciated the fact that they made that simple for that. Oh, if we had this wonderful event, if you're interested, you can call this number or include a link. But again, I pulled these within 5-10 minutes of just kind of scanning, but they did pop out to me as I was thinking through this presentation, and that's great. They made it easy for me to understand what it is that I'm looking at. Okay, so I don't know if many of you know this. This is really interesting to me, but in 1999, Saving Private Ryan, which is very clearly the best movie of the year, that year, lost the Oscar to Shakespeare in Love. Fine movie if you like it, but as far as awards caliber, it's not better than Saving Private Ryan. I mean, we all know this, okay? But they won, and you can't take that away from them. They will go down in history as being the best picture of that year. And what's interesting is, I actually read this article that said that Oscar campaign, going back to, when we talked about the Emmys, that Oscar campaign changed Oscar and awards campaigns forever. So what ended up happening is Steven Spielberg built this Saving Private Ryan. I mean, and if you've seen, I mean, it's great. I mean, it's the first 20 minutes is intense. Everyone who has been at war, I have not, so I cannot speak to this, but they're like, the realism of that movie was absolutely incredible. And then they go on, and everyone thought they were the front runner. I think they won a bunch of stuff leading into that. And so Miramax, who was the studio, they were an indie studio at the time. They produced Shakespeare in Love, also a very good movie, just not the best movie of the year. They went hard. They hustled like crazy. They had all the people involved doing interviews and on the radio and TV appearances, and they were at every single showing of this, and they were in front of everyone, and they were telling everyone why they were the best movie. And that hustle shifted everything. And Spielberg didn't want to do it. You know, Spielberg's had all these blockbusters. He doesn't need to do it. He goes, essentially, we've built the best movie, and they will come. And they didn't. And he didn't win the top honor of that year. And it's a playbook that actually continues today. So like that podcast that I listened to when it came to the Emmys, that all stems back to this awards campaign. The first thing that you need to do if you want an Emmy or a Grammy or anything else is you got to go out there and hustle for it, because it's not just going to come for you, because there are a lot of options and opportunities, and there's a lot of good TV, there's a lot of good films, there's a lot of good music, you know, and this is art, so you know it's all a bit subjective as well, and so you need to tell people why it's great. And so this changed everything. And so again, I go back to say, like, you don't have to spend money. I'm not saying you spend money, but the thing that I thought about 3 years ago is, like, if we're doing the work, well, let's talk about the work. Like, let's celebrate what we're doing. And so when I think about examples, consistently posting is certainly part of that. But it can be even more to it than that. Well, actually, I'll come back to these things. So I inserted this graph. This is actually very interesting. So when we think about efficiency, there's two things that we use a lot of, and actually we're using this a lot more. So if you have a Facebook and Instagram account, you can connect them together. And you may know this because they're owned by Meta, which is the same company. You can connect these two business accounts. And so what's interesting is, for the Alliance, this is an example of what we posted last week. We schedule actually a lot of things that we can because it can be efficient. If I can make 3 graphics all right now, I can post one for tomorrow, for next week, and then the week after that. And suddenly, my social media for Tuesday is done. And then if I build another, if I have another piece in my toolbox, we got some testimonials, and I got 2 of them. I'm going to make them right now, and I'm going to post one for Thursday, and then 3 weeks from Thursday. And now suddenly, once you get into that week and the hustle and bustle of everything that is going on, you already have content planned out. So I always think about this because we too have a lot going on. And so if we can be efficient in how we do these things, I certainly want to be, and this Meta is a great way to do that. So if you do have them paired together, your Facebook and Instagram business accounts, you can post at the same time, and you can schedule them out, and then they will magic. I mean, there's times when I'm like, forgot that we scheduled that. That's great. That's wonderful. That's more content, you know, that we're continuing to churn out. And then the other piece, and I talked about making something, is Canva. And again, Canva's not new. But it is something that we use actually a lot through the Alliance. And so if you're not familiar, Canva is an online platform where you can make graphics, you can make printed sheets, anything really print and digital, you can make through Canva. I will say one of the emphasis that we have, and that's the reason why I shared this on here, we could go through a whole tutorial on how to use Canva. But and we have a lot of what are called brands on Canva. The Alliance is one brand, Downtown Ames is another brand, our Live, Work, Play in Ames is another brand. But the nice thing is that you can load in your logos and your colors, and if you have like images that you want to use semi-regularly, you can all load these in ongoing, and then they're always there for you. So you don't have to be like, no, where did I keep my logo for this? Oh, nope, it's right there. You hit a button, and it brings it into the graphic. And so we use Canva a lot, and I'll talk about another way that we find it to be beneficial. But one of the things is we use Canva as a starting point. And I don't know what the AI person is going to talk about in November. You know, AI can be a great tool, but I think you also have to have that human and local touch to it as well. So Canva has a ton of templates on whatever size that you want to utilize it for. So it could be social media, or it could be a print publication like a one sheet. we always use those templates as starting points, and then we customize them quite often. And so we change the colors. So like if the graphic template is red and black, well, we're going to change them to our blues, or for downtown, we're going to introduce our brand colors into that. Again, with the fonts, and we bring our logo into it. And if we have original photography, we want to bring that into it as well. But how you can click around in it is very slick and easy, and it can build efficiencies on the products that you're making. So when we make templates, we oftentimes make them in Canva, and I would show anyone any of the templates that we're making and how we've customized them. But you can stack them on top of each other. And so like if you have a product graphic that you want to use, and you know it's like, oh, I can bring I know I'm going to have to take new pictures, say, of this glass. Okay, I can take that new picture, but I want like the border to be similar for this graphic. Well, you can make multiple pages, and you can just switch out the picture, and now suddenly you have a brand new graphic, and you can have text in there, and you maybe switch out the text if that's applicable. And now suddenly you don't have to create that entire graphic, you just have to switch out some of your information. And if that is one piece in your toolbox, it's okay to use it today, and then on Friday, and then maybe once next week, and then once the week after that. Because now you've built this, you've spent time customizing it, you've built it, and now you'll have it forever when you need it, and you keep building your toolbox. So we use Canva for everything. We have actually many people on our team on Canva. The other slick thing is that you can share it with other people. So Stephen, who works with me, or our events team, I can make part of an event graphic. They have access to it, and if the time or date needs to be changed, they can go in and change that and then download it and use it as they see fit. So if you have multiple people on your team, you're all working on the same file, which is super handy for us anyway, and I would imagine for anyone else. Correct. Yeah. It's an efficiency tool. I think about, people can tell the difference. I personally find I like us that when we adjust the template to our brand, because they know that we've touched it. Like, you know, Canva's not making downtown Ames templates, you know, with our specific colors and our logos. So I think they know it's like, okay, that specifically came from, you know, the downtown organization or the Alliance organization. But it's certainly a great starting point, because you may not be the have that graphic design lens or always want to think about it. And so this does, it gets you from absolutely nothing, because thinking about, like, if you have I need to create a graphic, and you're looking at a white part of your computer screen, essentially a white page, that's daunting to think about, like, how do I fill this? Like, where do I even start? Well, they start for you, and then you can customize it moving forward. And so we do nearly everything in Canva, with the exception of, you know, like our print publication and a few other things. But we've moved almost everything over to this, and in many ways because we're working in a high volume output thing. I'm not suggesting that, you know, you should match that volume, but you also are spinning many plates and wearing many hats. That you know, this is a great efficiency tool, along with the scheduling. Those are the two things we do a lot of. And we calibrate every week, sometimes every day. I mean, there's people in the office, all right, well, what are we doing for social media this week? We specifically talk about it every Monday, and I do some of it, Stephen does some of it, Karen does some of it, and then others do pieces along the way. We talk about it every day. I'm going to take this, you're going to take that. I'm not a huge, I need to know every day what we're doing and what times for the next month. I'm very responsive. But I'm responsive because we've built this toolbox where I know, okay, we can develop this cadence moving forward, certainly throughout the week, certainly throughout the quarter, and then we just calibrate along the way. So, I mean, this is really a summary of the story that I told, but it's not lost on me that the hustle that Shakespeare in Love had in order to get that Oscar nomination, they just went out there and got it. So And to me, that doesn't equate to money as it relates to this conversation, but it equates to, all right, well, let's try to slightly up the volume of content that we're doing. Let's try to do, if you're doing once a week, let's try to do 2 or 3 times a week. And then that's going to become more efficient, and you'll continue to build your toolbox, and then you'll ultimately probably have more. If you miss a day, it's not the be-all, end-all at all, actually. But I think what it does, and at least for us, and in my experience, not only in this organization and others, is that people start to see it more. You start to become top of mind, and I think over time that can pay off. Another way to engage with people is, again, it's kind of the hustle to it, but it's commenting on other people's posts. If you're collaborating with a business, and I'm going to get to kind of how that can relate to downtown, it's tagging those businesses. If someone is in a store, it's having that conversation and just saying, hey, are you following us on social media? We would love it if you are. Not everyone will. Some people may say, oh yeah, I'll do that, and either they don't or they honestly forget, and that's okay too. But I think it's fine to talk about the fact that, hey, we're active on social media, and if you like what's going on here, we're going to have a sale coming up in a couple weeks, so you can get that information on social media. If you create a QR code right there, you're like, well, if you scan this, that'll get you to our Facebook page, and you can like it. We'd love for you to come back. It's not like you absolutely have to follow us, but you can bring it up. If you don't ask, they may never think about it or know. They may come in and buy something and then leave again. What does it hurt? I mean, the worst case scenario is maybe they don't follow you. But at the end of the day, I bet some will. And then if you're building this cadence of talking about your business, they're going to see that more. I talk to people all the time about, again, if we're doing the work, let's talk about the work. Hey, follow us. When we launched Live, Work, Play in Ames, it was right around 515 days. I had business cards that said, hey, we're launching this new thing. You should scan this and follow us on social media. I sent my daughter up and down the street trying to get people to follow us. I mean, it's what's the worst that can happen? They don't follow us? It's up to them. But I think over time, certainly if they're going to be a repeat customer, it could be something that they're going to engage with, and they'd be like, oh, now I'm seeing whatever this piece of content is, and they may engage with it. All of this philosophy that I talk about, I've learned this over time, and I live it, okay? And again, I recognize that part of my job, and a large part of my job, is creating content for social media. And I know that that is not probably the vast majority of all of the time that you want to work on. I completely get it. But when I go back to, that's why I want to boil down. I don't give numbers like as far as, oh, you should absolutely be doing this many posts. No. Do as much as you can. Try to push yourself a little bit, but you make that efficient, and then you start adding more things to your toolbox. And again, I do think about social media as a long game. I do not, on a weekly, actually even a quarterly basis, I don't go look at our metrics for the Alliance or downtown. I just don't, because I treat social media as a utility, and it's just something that we need to do. Now, occasionally, when we do look at the numbers and they're awesome, we talk about them. And that's what this graph is, because we built, we utilize this philosophy. It's like, let's continue to make downtown Ames top of mind. I've always said that of all of the social media accounts, our Ames Alliance social media accounts, those are our flagship accounts, because that's our overarching brand. But our downtown account is our connection, our organization's connection to the broader community. And so for that reason alone, it's incredibly valuable, because there are going to be people across Ames and across our region, say, common citizens, they have no reason to engage with the Ames Regional Economic Alliance. We would love it if they did, but some of the stuff just may not resonate with them. And so we've tried to diversify that content as well to make it appealing for people to maybe get news and information, and stories about business and industry. But I also recognize, like, it's a business and industries type social media account. Downtown is different because we host all of these community events that we are encouraging the community to come down here. And so we've churned out, we really increased our input for downtown 3 years ago, and this is our reach. And so I'm going to unpack this graph a little bit. So this is year over year, and I'm approximating, but it's like March, it's the same time frame, March into April, okay? And so say March 15 to April 15. Okay, the dates are a little bit different, but it was the same time frame of like a Monday through Sunday type time frame of the same amount of weeks. And so when we look at what was our account reach on Facebook in 2021, and then 2022, and then most recently in 2025, and our reach just skyrocketed once we started really churning out some stuff. And so again, we were building our toolbox on the types of content that we wanted to promote on the downtown accounts. And so one of the interesting things for downtown is because downtown, unlike other parts of our geographic region, we are actively inviting people nearly once a month to come down here. And one of the things that we place a lot of emphasis on is the businesses in downtown engaging with that event. And so we are actually creating content, and I'm sure many of you have seen it. If you've participated in one or many of the events, we're creating content to support the downtown businesses that none of the businesses need to create. And so one of the really neat things that we've really seen an increase of is, businesses across downtown commenting on it. And what that does is commenting on some of our posts or utilizing some of the graphics. One, it's efficient because you don't have to make any of the graphics. But if you comment, even, wow, this is really exciting, we're looking forward to seeing people, that comment pops up for people. I don't know how the algorithm works, I can't speak to it, but I know it pops up much more often on downtown's Facebook page that now has 10,000 followers. And so it builds this cycle of engagement around these events. So we're actively promoting. These are just a hand, 6 out of, I don't remember how many we have in downtown on a yearly basis, but it's probably close to double this. But these are great because we're encouraging the community to engage in this geographic business region. And so I would encourage, if anything, as these things come on, tack on to it. Yes, we are bringing, I don't remember how many people we had last year for Witches Walk, but I know that it was very full. And Beth, you were probably feeling it there at Della Viti. So, I mean, that's exciting. And so help us promote you as well. I mean, that's ultimately the goal. I mean, I love it when I see people down here, particularly for the events. And so it builds that familiarity with the region as well. Here's some examples that were just screenshotted of just businesses commenting on some of our posts. We are very regular on downtown on those types of posts and continuing to think about, all right, well, what's the next thing that we can build into our toolbox? So shout out to all of these things. And we don't do it for every event, but we also do try our best to oftentimes have customized individual posts or graphics, say Music Walk that's coming up, like what musician is at this business, tag on to that, utilize it. So all of that is to say, I thought it was fun to kind of bring in the hustle when it comes to movies, but I do think that there is something to it. Don't just assume people are going to know or gather the information. Just be unafraid to throw it out there. Help promote. That's what we do all the time. If you're doing the work, let's celebrate the work, and don't be afraid to tell people, certainly more than once. And that's it. But again, I will actually reiterate, sorry, thanks for the clap though. Yeah. Yes, thanks. This can be an ongoing conversation. I mean, it's truly, I said it before, but I really did mean that. None of the stuff that we do is proprietary. In fact, I think one of the greatest assets that we have as an organization is that we are grinding and putting out a high volume of things. It's something that I'm very proud of, but like Newman with the mail, it's like, oh gosh, it's just, the list never gets shorter. I feel like every Sunday afternoon I'm making this list of, all right, what should we get out this week? What should we do? And it just never ends. But it certainly pays off for us, and I use that as an example to, hey, just share the work. Let's just start, but start with one thing. Don't start with, I need to have this high volume amount of things. No, if you have some of those tools already in place, you start with those, start scheduling stuff out, and then just try one new thing. That's all you need to do. So, and then that will build over time. So, thanks again.